Madam Chair, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good, that's better. Okay. I'm grateful to Valerie and to Hillary and the National Youth Council for inviting me to come and share my thoughts. And I know that Valerie especially wants me to cause some trouble. And I'm looking forward to it. Maybe I took a red pill yesterday, so I'm going to be different today. In terms of what I'm going to try and do today, I think there are two possible ways of going about this. One way is to be very dogmatic, kind of like to be very kind of like prescriptive in what I think, in what my research says, in what my practice say. Another way is just to be very relativist in that, yeah, everything is all right, everything is right. And I think a third possible way is that I invite you to a dialogue. I invite you towards a critical engagement where I share my thinking, but I also expect you to challenge my thinking, to challenge the concepts that I put before you, the research I put before you, to locate this discussion within your practice, and hopefully we can end up with a dialogue. You know, that's what I'm hoping for. So I'm hoping today that I'll be able to kind of like highlight the different terminologies that I use to label this practice. You know, some call it global education or development education or a host of other things. So I want to kind of like share where I'm coming from there. I also want to share global education, global youth work models. What for other people, what are they saying it is? What is the model in Ireland? Is it different from the model in Europe, the model in Africa, the model that other people are using? So I'm hoping that I will actually share some of those conceptual models. I'm also from my own experience, want to share what I would consider as the defining characteristics of global education or global youth work. I was in the youth university in Spain about 10 days ago, and there were probably about 300 people from all over the world, organized by the Council of Europe, the North-South Center. And they put 5 of us as trainers. And we all kind of like, you know, when people think that they're the best experts. So we spent the whole 2 days arguing as to who's got the best perspective. And we never got anything done. But one of the things that was a very big sticking point was like, you know, should non-formal education be an integral part of global youth work or global education? And some people felt it has to be. Some people say it doesn't have to be. And we spent a lot of time arguing about that. And I think for me, I want to share based on my experience, based on my research, based on my practice, what I feel some of these defining characteristics are. And you might tell me to go away and do something outside, but I'm happy to share that. But also, I want to kind of like provoke a critical reflection, you know, and one of the questions that I will ask later on is that, is global education, is development education just a plaster that we stick on a wound to make ourselves better, when we are not addressing the deep structural causes of grotesque inequality across the world in our own backyard? And that's one of the questions I want to reflect on as well. So what is it called? You know, so many people call it so many different things. And in 2008, I did some research in the UK. In 2008, there were 50 universities that were delivering youth and community work courses across the UK. And out of the 50, I was able to interview 43 of them. And then they were either module leaders or program leaders for these youth and community work courses. And I asked them, this thing that you do that has got this global dimension, what is it called? So you could see the name from global education, mission-shaped practice, international youth work. There were so many names. And I think sometimes we don't get a common terminology. We don't get a common label about what we're talking about. The Council of Europe is very clear in calling it global education, and in a lot of European countries they talk about that. In terms of the formal education, people talk about global citizenship, you know. So what the terminology can be compared to the concept because, or the process of whatever you're talking about. So I don't want to waste a lot of time because I've only got 20 minutes. I promised Valerie that I will actually stick to 20 minutes. So God help me. But the whole point is that it is called so many different things. And I don't want to get bogged down in the terminology. I want to move on more towards the process. And I think the Maastricht definition is something that I can see applying to most other practices. That global education is education that opens people's eyes and minds to the realities of the globalized world. And for me that is important because it talks about opening eyes and minds, and it also talks about not only opening eyes and minds, but also action towards something, towards global justice. So for me, this definition encompasses a lot of other definitions of whatever we call it, whether it's global education, global youth work, development education. And one of the problems that some people find with development education is that development education is based on the oppressive tablets of colonialism. And for some people, it has got a colonial connotation when you talk about development education. And that's one of the reasons I understand that the Development Education Association in England actually calls itself Think Global now. They've changed their name because some of us have been going at them and said, nah. So that's worth looking into. But for me, when you talk about global education, when you talk about youth work, and forgive me if I use these terms interchangeably, because we're talking about a process here, and I want to focus on that process. For me, global youth work or global education should be concerned with the process and concept of globalization. We talk about time and space and distance being conquered. We talk about an increasing interconnectedness between our lives and the lives of other people. You know, in the past, it would have been impossible to move $1 trillion because $1 trillion is actually Mountain Everest times 120 times. You know, if you put up Mount Everest 120 times, and then that's how high when you stack $1 trillion, that's how that would be. But you can move that at the click of a button, you know. In the 60s, there were very few dedicated voice paths. Now there are millions, yeah? So time and space and distance has been conquered. People are talking about the Ebola virus right now, and that has got implications for all of us. So there is not only a growing interconnectedness, but there is a consciousness of that. So for me, global education must address that interconnectedness. It must also be based on the principles of informal education or non-formal education or experiential learning, if you want to put it like that. It must kind of like promote consciousness and action. It's not only about kind of like raising awareness for me. Global education must go beyond that. Global youth work must go beyond that. It must be about, one, provoking consciousness so that people gain a new understanding, and two, supporting young people to take action. For me, there cannot be, and I'm being very, very open here and putting my goods out there, and I expect you to challenge them. I want you to disagree with them. In fact, I'll be disappointed if you don't disagree with me. But what I'm saying is, like, global education, global youth work must be based on promoting social justice. We live in a in a world fraught with grotesque inequality, where there's a lot of structural violence. It's not only happening out there, it's also happening in here, you know, in our own backyards. There's a connection between the poverty levels in our own countries here in Ireland and the poverty levels and then the structures that generate that across the globe. And we need to be able to understand that, and we need to be able to challenge that in global education. And for me, the most important part is that it is located in people's everyday realities. You know, global youth work must connect with young people where they are, and then be able to stretch them. Just wanted to share quickly a few conceptual models, because the DEA, now they are Think Global. They talk about global youth work or global education or development education being about connect, challenge, change. The idea is to connect with young people, with their realities within their territory, both literally and metaphorically. We talk about challenging them, challenging the things they know to be right and wrong, good and bad, challenging their construction of social reality, and then changing them, changing the way they perceive the world and therefore the way that they interact with the world. Another conceptual model is Woolley's conceptual model, which I like as well. And then, according to Woolley, global education or development education should be about exploring global issues. And when you explore global issues through global experiences, you can have a new global perspective. So, global issues, global experiences, global perspectives. For example, you can go to Gambia or you can go to India and you stay in your own room and then you eat your English breakfast or British breakfast or Irish breakfast and you watch your TV and you don't leave the room. So you have actually gone to another place, but you don't have a global experience. Yet you can put at the youth bay and you can stay there and explore some of those issues through role play or through other things, and you can have a global experience. So it's about how you generate all of these three dimensions to form global youth work. And then the North-South Center talk about, their view is that global youth work or global education or development education should be about inculcating a new set of values and attitudes, knowledge, so that people have an understanding of the world, people gain a consciousness of the world, and therefore they develop new skills to bring about change. So these are the three dimensions, according to the North-South Center, that is that global youth work or global education must be focused on.